when you have chronic health conditions, you get a little bit of some PTSD sometimes because you've been through something so extreme. And like you were saying, when you went in for this, you told me beforehand, like you thought, oh my gosh, like this might actually be it this time. And once you've already faced death and then you push through it, and then something else comes, you're like, oh, okay, is this actually it? Because you also kind of think, like, how many times am I going to get away with this?
The content presented in this podcast and YouTube show is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health or a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard or seen on this show. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The host, guest, and producers of this show are not responsible for any adverse effects resulting from your use of or reliance on any information presented.
Andrea, can you hear us?
Many years ago, I died for 26 seconds. There are so many people in this world that have experienced life events that have led to their sole purpose. Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea will bring you these significant life events that demonstrate how to use those moments for guidance and life purpose. These are our stories.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Wake Up Your Soul. Today's guest is a repeat guest. It's Jay Waddell, and he's going to talk to us about where he's at now, 18 months later from when he was on last. But first, I just want to let everyone know I'm going to be taking a little break, or at least that's my intention. But, sometimes things just keep coming at me and I can't stop. But my intention is to take a little break from the podcast just because, as I'm sure a lot of you have been listening, I've been going through a lot of different health challenges. And I want to be able to get that under control and have full focus on that. So that's where things are at. So I'm still here, but I am going to be taking a little break. But let's welcome Jay back. Hi,
Hey,
Jay.
hi, Andrea. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you back. We were talking before about some of the stuff that's been going on with you, and you said things have been great. So it's been 2.5 years almost. So a week from now, it'll be 2.5 years with your heart, your new heart, your heart transplant. You said recently you did have a little episode. You said it's very that was really interesting to me. You're sharing this story about something that is, I don't know if you wanna say common, but it is something that happens to it started with a C. Sorry, I don't remember all the letters, but C something, but you said it's something that happens with heart transplant patients.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Andrea. It occurred this summer. Today is July, and it was about 2 months ago.
Okay.
And it was a viral infection called CMV.
Mhm.
Don't ask me what that stands for.
Okay.
But
Well, if you don't know, good. I'm glad.
yeah.
I'm not the only one.
So, anyway, it's a dormant virus that doesn't normally get activated. But I also had blood clots in my lungs and pulmonary emboli, and they were kind of nasty and hurt. And when they came, there's some trauma and stress for the body,
Mhm.
and trauma and stress can trigger this dormant virus. So that's what happened. And it presented as food poisoning. It confused the doctors for a number of days. And so food poisoning, throwing up, GI problems. And that
So
last,
are those the symptoms that you would usually get as a heart transplant patient? I mean, why were doctors so confused? I would think, for me, I know, which it throws them off though, the pacemaker, I come in with that and then they automatically like put on their cardiac hat and then they miss other things. But I would think with you, like that would be the hat they put on first is okay, this is a transplant patient. What happens to a transplant patient? What, you know?
anybody ever tell you you ask thoughtful questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I screwed up on this one. I'm in Boulder. My heart transplant hospital is in Denver, 45 minutes away. I went to my local hospital, presented with food poisoning, and the local doctors knew I was heart transplant, but sort of treated me as normal cardiac guy walking in off the street.
Mhm.
And about day 5, we kicked into using my doctors from my transplant hospital who see this virus all the time.
Mm.
And they said, "Oh my God, I can tell what you got in 1 minute. You've got CMV."
See,
And
that's
so
crazy though, because somebody with a heart transplant, I'm gonna say you're a little bit more fragile than others, and so you would think that would be the first person to bring in for a consult.
my bad. It was my bad.
I
But
no, you're but, like, as a patient, I think there's way too much that ends I get it because it happens to me too, but there's way too much that ends up falling on us as patients, and it shouldn't be that way. It really shouldn't. That's not our job. I mean, what about the people that aren't as knowledgeable
yeah.
about their own conditions?
Yeah, well, so anyway, water under the bridge at this
Yeah.
point, but so misdiagnosed for a while, and the virus also had kind of a neurological effect where I didn't have my full brain for a while, and
Yeah.
so I was more scared and more anxious than normal, but I persevered and got through it and got on the right meds, and I've had a month of feeling really, really good. I just mentioned I went on the longest hike I've been on in 19 years today.
Yeah. That's
So
awesome. So, they figured out what was wrong, and then you were saying you were in the hospital for how long?
2 weeks.
2 weeks, and you said you couldn't even drink water, so you were doing intravenous fluids and all that, and we were talking beforehand too, which I just wanna acknowledge this because I think a lot of people go through this. When you have chronic health conditions, you get a little bit of some PTSD sometimes because you've been through something so extreme, and like you were saying, when you went in for this, you told me beforehand, like, you thought, "Oh my gosh, like, this might actually be it this time." And once you've already faced death and then you push through it and then something else comes, you're like, "Oh, okay, is this actually it?" Because you also kind of think like, "How many times am I gonna get away with this? Like, I'm not a cat, I don't have 9 lives. How many times will I be able to skirt around this?" I think it's fair for that fear to creep in, but then that's where I think this next chapter of your life comes up, right? You're writing this next book called Flip It, and that's where we have to learn to flip it when things get really challenging. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, by the way, I think I've used 6 of my lives and I have 3 left.
That's awesome.
A comment on the PTSD first. When I was in the middle of that, I told you I was scared and wondered, I've got through a lot. Is this the one I don't get through? And so I did think that. And
Yeah,
then after you get through it, I feel bulletproof again and thought, I am so adaptable. I
right.
can flip forward, been there, done that until something happens where you're flat on your back. So I think I'm immune to the PTSD until it sneaks back in.
Yeah, I know, and I feel like for me, when stuff happens, there's, like, that moment of panic, and then there's that deep breath, and my brain rebalances, and it's like, "Okay, you've been here before. You've had major life challenges. Now what? What do you do?" And that's where you have to start talking rationally in your
Yeah.
brain.
You just asked about the next book project. I'm
Yeah.
gonna interject my last book project. When we talked 18 months
Oh,
ago,
yeah.
I was just on the edge of writing a book. I was 1 year post heart transplant and
Mhm.
I was collecting stories. I collected 34 stories from other heart transplant survivors. And I did get that book published earlier this year, Voices from the Heart, a
Mhm.
collection of inspiring heart transplant stories. And I found that I love collecting stories and I love meeting new people I've never met and
Yeah.
people who've gone through hard stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what that book was. And I was trying to give them a voice and a platform to tell their story. Sometimes people going through hard things like you and I and others with disease or illness or disability sort of get lost.
Mhm.
And so I like working on something that gives them a voice.
Yeah.
So I finished that book and I was a business consultant. I thought, now what? And I went, so what now what? I've gone through this, but what am I going to do now? And so I thought what I really enjoyed was meeting people and hearing their stories and giving them a voice and a platform and curating and collecting them in a way that creates a body of lived experience to share with others so that others it's exactly what you're doing with your podcast.
Mhm.
You're creating a curated body of lived experience that is compelling and meaningful and relatable that others can go, that could be me.
Mhm.
And if Jay did it, if Andrea did it, if Mary did it, if Ellen did it, so can I.
And it's about that, yes, hearing that other person's story and feeling like, "Okay, they did it, I can do it." But then from there, where do we go, right? And that's where the stories become very valuable because you hear somebody's story and it sparks ideas within you like, "Okay, well, they tried this, maybe I should try that." And I mean, for me, that's part of why I've been so passionate about doing the podcast and sharing all these different stories is I don't feel like I would be where I am today if I hadn't connected with usually it's somebody random online on some of the support groups on Facebook and stuff like that where we connect because we've been through the same thing and that's what's really valuable is hearing a story that's similar to yours so that you can hear what they figured out because it's quite the road. It's like I mean there is no easy way to get to where you need to go when you're battling something
Yeah.
major and when you can hear somebody else's story, they've already been through all the difficulties. So it enables you to bypass a little bit of the challenges. And so that's what got me where I am is connecting with others and getting advice what worked for them. And obviously not everything that worked for others worked for me, but I was able to kind of listen to their story and hear and resonate with what I thought would work for me, whereas some it's like, "Well, I know that wouldn't actually pertain to me. Okay, next part," you know?
Now, to your point, pre heart transplant, I had a major stroke about 10 years earlier. And frankly, that was harder than the heart transplant.
Wow,
I really got whacked and I lost my brain and my memory and I still lost half my vision
wow.
and so that was really hard. And about 6 months after the stroke, I was working with a occupational therapist, and she said the words that was my fracture, first fracture, and I was at a fork in the road and stuck and paralyzed from all of it physically and cognitively, neurologically, and an occupational therapist working in my home for the activities of daily living. How do you do laundry? How do you cook? And she said, "Jay, have you heard of neuroplasticity?" And I said, "No." And she told me about it. Well, you can rewire your brain. The signals aren't rigid and, all the things Andrea, and are trained for. But I was learning and I got this vision in my head of water finding a new path. And if I stimulate my brain and engage in certain activities and do them repeatedly, I can create new neural networks. I can rewire my brain.
Mhm.
So I flipped forward because of those words from the occupational therapist and she recommended a book I read called Stroke
Okay.
Rebel by a woman in Sweden who had a stroke much worse than mine. And the things she did to recover were astounding.
Mhm.
And so I started looking for books by positive outliers, people who beat the odds and made miraculous recoveries. And so I myself really looked for those types of things. And I've gotten feedback from other people, who've said, Jay, tell your story. And initially I said, I don't want to be in the spotlight and I'm not that extraordinary. And they said, no, but the
No,
fact
you're
that
not, but
yeah, not but they said the fact that you had something hard and got through it means that when I have something hard, I could get through it too.
Yeah.
And so when they put it that way, I think us and others sharing a story that other people can see and relate to and go, if they went through it and they tried these things,
Yeah.
I can too.
When you were talking, something that was hitting me that I think is important to share is that when we're going through difficulties, I mean, how many times can you look back on something difficult and think, like, did you get through it on your own 100%? And for me, nothing has ever been alone, but I did put in the time and the work for sure. But it's always been sparked. And I think that's the key. Like, it's always been sparked by somebody else. So, like, for you, just the word neuroplasticity, like, I'm sure that sparked something in your brain where it's like, "Huh, what is this? I should look into this." And it's been the same for me where there's certain things where somebody says something and it just kind of the brain just goes, "Hmm, okay, this is interesting. I need to travel down this path."
Yeah, that's it. And something, I don't know if you said it in our conversation, or I heard it on, I just listened to one of your episodes on my hike today, saying what worked for somebody else may or may not work for me or for you.
Right.
But you hear enough things and you see what sticks against the wall and what
Mhm.
is it that I can buy into.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it's that, what can I buy into? What sparks within me? Because you'll hear a story, and I think that's how it should be. Just let it all flow through you, and something is going to resonate that you feel you should follow the thread on. There's gonna be stuff where you're like, "Meh," and even though it might seem genius and a great idea, but it just doesn't really resonate, and there's a reason. So just, let it come and go and follow whatever is really sparking and sticking in your head and kind of keeps
yeah.
ringing and coming back to you because you'll probably wake up the next day and you just can't stop thinking about it. There's something we've been dealing with one of my kids, and I've had like three different people now mention a solution that's different than what I was planning to do. And I know about the solution, but I just haven't felt like that was probably the right way to go. But I was like, gosh, it just keeps coming up. So, like maybe I should explore that.
I'm going to launch off your phraseology there of spark.
Yeah.
And we were just trying to move into Flip It. And so Flip It is a book about people who flipped forward, got stuck, and found a way forward at some point. And and I've collected about half the stories so far. And one of the things that's so interesting is they're typically, I think the process of flipping and a flip journey is your life is cruising or moving along, some fracture or intrusion happens. We get stuck or paralyzed. Our nervous system probably puts us into flight. And how do we get out of that? And is there a spark? And does it come on our own? Is it occupational therapist? Is it a book you read? Is it a loved one? Do we find it on our own? And I've collected about half the stories, and I'm trying to look for themes and patterns. And the theme and the pattern is it's different
The
for, for
pattern
everyone.
is no pattern.
Yeah. Yeah. One person in the book is somebody I knew, an acquaintance who was in Colorado, retired early, moved to a beach town in Mexico on the ocean and decided to become a surfer. And he did. And he's in this little village and it's just idyllic. And he had created what he wanted and he had a stroke and it affected to the optic nerve in both eyes, and he went legally blind,
Oh my gosh.
like overnight. And so here he is, mid-50s, suddenly blind, living in a small town on his own. And his flip was some of his surf buddies who hung in this town of 800 people on the ocean. And they said, dude, you come out in the water with us. You're such a good surfer. We can tell you when a big wave's coming. You know the feel of the water. And so
Oh,
his spark and his flip was he kind of said, BS, I don't accept all of this.
yeah.
I don't accept it is what it is. You and I have had
Mhm.
talked about that language.
Yeah.
He said, I don't accept it is what it is. And so he found a way to continue surfing and living on his own while legally blind. And so the spark can be different for everybody.
Mhm. Yeah, it's really miraculous the things that you can do when you're really pushed. And sometimes we have to recognize that those hardships are just there to push us into a direction that we need to go. And it's going to be for the betterment of ourselves for sure. So, what have you learned within these stories? Obviously, you're saying that they're all very different. Are there any similarities?
Yeah, great question. And it's a project. You and I have talked intuition
Yeah.
sometimes, and you feel it and you
Mhm.
follow it, and you just know it's the right thing. And so with Flip It, that's what it's been.
Mm.
And I felt this energy and surge to follow, and I'm kind of letting it take me where it takes me. And I'm learning so much. And what is the book about? And who is it for? And what will it accomplish for them after they read it? That patterns and themes, one of them is that most people, the majority of people, after trauma and adversity, do not have a plan for how to move forward. They don't have this strategically mapped out milestones for what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And they're probably in some element of flight and nervous system out of whack. And they just know, I don't want to stay where I am.
Mhm.
And I am so uncomfortable where I am today and almost any movement, I need to face a different direction. And so most flips start without a plan, and they're about moving off where I am, and they often start with physical movement, and physical movement breaks you out of some of the nervous system stuff that's going on. And then if I can get up today and have a cup of coffee and get out of bed, that's a great start.
And just changing that atmosphere too and what you're looking at every single day, right? Like, and just having a different visual can change your thought process and what you're thinking about. And so I can see where that's really important. And what I'm hearing too is that a lot of people, and I feel like with myself, you get to a point of surrender. It's surrender and intuition, right? Where you just like, okay, I have got to just surrender because this is, well, I hate the saying it is what it is, but it is what it is at a point, right? It is what it is currently. And I need something different. So I'm going to surrender into whatever this is at the moment and what feels right to me, and that's where you start following that intuition of what feels right for moving forward.
Yeah. So running down the list of kind of other learnings and lessons so far.
Yeah.
And another one is flipping is messy.
Yeah.
Flipping is nonlinear. It's not like, okay, I've started my flip. It's all going to trend up now. It doesn't work that way. And there are oscillations, and oscillation is normal in the universe. And so the same goes for flipping. And so almost always with flipping, you with your health issues, me with a heart transplant, I'll take meds for life. And it doesn't resolve. It doesn't resolve ulcerative colitis,
Oh,
and it doesn't resolve heart issues. It doesn't resolve loss of a loved one. But what you flip is not that. You flip your script and
mhm.
you flip your story. You flip your narrative of how I'm going to get up tomorrow. So that's
Yeah.
that's another part of it is you don't flip the obstacle. You flip how you approach it.
Yeah, because you don't want your hardships to become your everyday identity. It's really important that you move past them. I mean, they're going to be with you for sure, but there's still a way to move past them and move forward and have enjoyment in life. And yeah, there's definitely gonna be the setbacks, right? And then there's those moments of like, "Oh my gosh, could this get any worse?" And then there's that PTSD that kinda sets in for a second. I've definitely had that one. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, no, like, is this ever going to end?" Which is, like, super crazy when you stop and think about it, like, very irrational to say, "Is this ever going to end?" Of course it's going to end, you know?
So here's another theme that emerged, and it sort of butts up against PTSD, which is as I've worked with people and collaborated with them, and these are generally not writers and authors and people with podcasts. They're people who I've been able to come across or people have referred to me who've had these hard things, and they're sharing and they're reflecting on their story in a way they maybe never did in their life. And as they reflect on it, and we talk about the language and the framework of flipping and flip journey and so forth, and flipping your script, they start to take on identity and they take on flip is an action verb. It's kind of cool. You can make a conscious choice. I'm going to start to flip. And there's something that feels empowering with it.
Mhm.
And then it shifts from that empowerment into identity. I am a flipper, and as they journal and they write their story, and I say, how do you feel now that you see what you've written and you've reflected? And they say, wow, I'm a flipper.
I'm a
And
flipper.
I'm a flipper. No, and look at
Feel
this.
like a dolphin.
Who cannot like dolphins?
Ah, I love dolphins.
And so people take on this identity. And as we talk and they reflect, I say, so did you just have trauma and adversity show up one time? It's like, no, it repeats and it shows up multiple times. And as it does, it's like a lot of things, neuroplasticity and neural networks. And after you've learned to flip multiple times, what do you become, Andrea?
A flipper.
A
A
serial,
cereal.
a serial flipper.
A cereal flipper,
A
alright.
serial flipper,
It
and
sounds like a crime.
it sounds like, well, you're just waiting. Well, it's sorta like you're waiting for the next trauma. It's like, "Watch me now."
Yeah,
And
watch me
in
now.
and in fact, the story of Rick, who went blind, he had an incident which makes me laugh and almost cry. He gets on a plane from Mexico, and flies by himself, legally blind, to San Francisco to visit his daughter. And
Mhm.
he's there and he's shopping in a Trader Joe's to pick up a few items he can't get in Mexico. And he's in the store and he calls his daughter and says, "Honey, can I get you anything from Trader Joe's?" And she says, "Yeah, I'll text you things." She sends a list of 14 items for him to, get at Trader Joe's, and he's legally blind. And so
Yeah.
he's scrambling around the store and he gets them and he steps out into the sunlight waiting for an Uber to get back to her house. And he pats himself on the back and he says, "Pretty good for a blind SOB." And so his story, that's the title for his story is "I'm a blind dude, but
Yeah.
watch me now,"
Yeah.
which is, yes, that's the way it is, but, watch me going forward.
Yeah. There's so many people that have pushed through stuff, and there's so many people that feel like they can't do it because they don't have whatever that person has, and the truth is, this is what somebody else that was on the podcast said, and it's like, "What lies within me lies within you," and I love that, like, it's very true. We are all human beings at the end of the day, and we all have the same powers within us, we just have to try, and one of the best things you can do is connect with somebody that's done it to help guide you through it.
So, Andrea, this whole concept of there's a, and I'm making this stuff up on the fly,
Oh, fun.
the book. So it's one of those things where you fall in love with your own ideas. I think it's amazing, but I may delude myself. But what do you think of this concept of there's a flipping journey and a fork in the road and we get stuck and somehow we flip and, I'm sort of making this up on the fly, but what do you think about it? Can you relate?
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, I think we all experience forks in the road, right? And then we have to turn the page and we have to become somebody else essentially. And I mean, I shouldn't say become somebody else, but we take on, I don't know if I want to say a new identity, but we take on a new part to ourselves for sure. And we build ourselves up. I mean, we are never going to be exactly the same person we were when we were born, right? Like every experience we go through changes us and turns us into who I think we're meant to be. I think everything we experience, we're meant to experience. So I do think we get the forks in the road on purpose. And then you're able to choose, though. I think you got to choose whether you're going to flip the narrative or not.
I do think that word you just inserted there, choice, we have way more choice than we think sometimes. And really hard stuff happens, but
Yeah.
there usually is always some element of choice, even if the choice is just how we're going to tell our story tomorrow.
Yeah.
And flipping is a conscious choice, and
Mhm.
one of your podcasts episodes I just listened to said part of it is mindset, but part of it is our nervous system and our body,
Mhm.
and we need to approach them holistically and together.
Mhm.
So I would agree. So part of it is choice to flip, but I think it can be choice to I will engage some physical activity that will start to demonstrate to my nervous system a repeatable pattern, and that's post stroke. I created a brain rewiring regimen, and part of it was throw a ball against the wall every day for an hour and do it again and again and again and again and hike on trails. And your brain just goes, huh, this is safe. This is safe. This is safe. I went out hiking several days this week and it's just trying to tell my brain I'm not so fragile. And I haven't done that stuff in 2 years, 2.5 years. And I thought I need to physically do something to tell my brain
I
some of
can.
this stuff is not dangerous.
Mhm.
And then my brain will say, okay, I guess you're right.
Yeah. Jay, so where can people buy the previous book and the future book, and what can they expect to gain from this future book? Flip it.
The first book, Voices from the Heart, a collection of inspiring heart transplant stories, is available on Amazon under my name, Jay Waddell.
Okay.
And so that is out there. And what can they get from it is, in particular, I wrote it for people. I was scared to get a transplant and I almost
Yeah.
didn't get one. And so part of it is to give courage and encouragement to those people considering it and give information from 34 people who've walked the walk.
Yeah.
And so they can look at it and be a little less scared, a little more informed, and feel good and not feel alone. A big
Mm.
part of anything chronic disease is not feeling alone and part of a community. The next book, Flip It, Stories of Flipping Forward After Trauma or Adversity, is not out yet. It's probably 9 months away, and I'll self-publish on Amazon.
Okay.
I would like to offer a call to flippers, and I would still love to collect more stories in the book. And what story fits, I don't
Okay.
know. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
people who've endured hard things,
Okay.
and that could be. I've got one story that is an immigrant from India who had to break off a prearranged marriage that her family had arranged in a really embedded Indian culture. And then she was so estranged for a while from her family, she moved to New York City by herself, and
Okay.
so that's a flip story.
Yeah.
I don't know what flip stories fit, but
Yeah.
if you're out there and you hear this, if you've got something that you think other people would gain value from hearing how you move through something,
Yeah. So, okay, if people think they have a story that would be good for your book, Flip It, how can they get in contact with you? Should they just email their story to you?
email me to contact and chat, and I can tell
Okay.
you about the process and
Okay.
what I'm looking for. Yeah,
Okay.
Jay Waddell 2221 at gmail.com, and
Okay.
I'm sure you'll probably put it in the show notes.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming back on and updating us where you're at and enlightening us on this second book that's coming out. Is there anything else you wanted to mention about this book that you have coming out?
No, that's it. Nothing new. But,
Okay.
Andrea, I've got to give you a shout out because I know you've got all sorts of stuff going. You got a family to raise and you've got your own health stuff and you're contemplating what to do with the podcast probably
Yeah.
weekly. And
Yeah.
so to make time to spend with me and hear this and share it, I deeply appreciate because I know it's a pull on
Yeah.
your time.
No, everybody that's come on, I'm appreciative of them even coming on the podcast and sharing their story. So I always just want to help people too. So it's like it's hard for me to say no to people because that's what this is about is helping you and helping you to help others as well. So I'm very happy to do it. So thank you again for coming on.
Thank you so much. All the best.
Thank you.
Take care.